So intense experience with hypnotic qualities, we can apply a solution to an everyday link experience. These are everyday hypnotic qualities, experiences with hypnotic qualities, everyday experiences. You can look at a sunset, as we mentioned in the course previously. Now, if you're feeling homesick, Andy, and you've driven across the M62, do you recognise that?
I do. It's meant to be one of the most photographed cityscapes of New York, isn't it?
Yes, it is beautiful, isn't it? I was gonna pronounce it probably Birkenhead. Is that proper? Or I've got to hear you say it.
Big.
Brilliant. I'm not even going to try and attempt to say it like that. Okay, but that picture was taken on a nice spring day. I was just sat there. I was actually delivering a course in the area, and I thought, let me just go down. And I found this spot, it's idyllic spot, as you do. I'm sat there and just sort of drifting into the sunset. And you can get the ferry across the Mersey. But it is beautiful, it really is, and it's sort of, I thought I'd slide this picture in for our Liverpool contingent.
Is that from Wallasey or Birkenhead?
Birkenhead. Yeah, it is Birkenhead. Come on, you should know that. yeah. Yeah, that missed a trick, do you?
Was that morning time, Jim?
No, it was in the afternoon.
Oh,
it was in the afternoon.
Sun
It might have been in the morning. I don't remember. I don't recall now. Who knows? Who knows? No, you're right. And I'd been delivering a course there, and I'd got there as you do. And I have my coffee, in case you haven't noticed, after I've had my green juice. And I have my coffee, and I'm sort of sat there, and there was no one there. It's so idyllic. And the beauty about this country is that, certainly in the summertime, and when it's approaching summertime, it's really light, isn't it? So it's really, really light, and it's just in the morning and in the evening as well. There's a sort of beauty where you sort of sat there, and it's just peace. It really is, and you sort of see the first ferry come out, and you look out there, and you think, wow, there's hypnotic qualities for you. And you can smell the sea air, and you can feel that sort of breeze, a gentle breeze, and a crisp in the morning, that sort of crisp feeling in the air, and you sort of see a bit of rustling, people walking and getting up and starting to go. Just sort of peace just before everyone's sort of making their way at work and doing all the things they've got to do. And do you get
It's a great time.
It is a great time.
Yeah.
It's a great time.
That's why I used to enjoy the work in the news agents, because I'm so early and I
Absolutely.
got that every day.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a sense of serenity and peace, the calm before the storm. The storm before the calm.
Before you get to two people in.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the beauty. But I didn't want to let our Spain, our customer Spain, and there you go. I couldn't just do Liverpool without thinking of Spain as well, and that's actually probably a lot further away from where you are in Spain. That's Ibiza.
Oh, right. Yeah, I was like, I don't recognise it.
Yeah.
That is the calm before the storm.
Yeah, that is a storm, man. Yeah. But you can sit there, isn't it? There's a hypnotic quality. You're sort of in that moment where the only moment you've got is the moment. There's a sort of beauty and serenity about that, and there's a hypnotic quality about that because your mind's so receptive. It really is. And, I think for me, we talked about creating linkage, and if you can create the experience based on the person's reality, so they will tell you what you need to know about what experience works for them. So it could have been, having a coffee in the morning at, Birkenhead, or could have been on a cruise in the Mediterranean. Just a moment, and you can create linkage for that person. They can re-experience that specific time in their life where they felt calm and peaceful. Now, there could be a handful of experiences because things change, don't they? But that's a useful thing for me, and it's almost like listening to a tune. Now, I don't know if you're like me, I love listening to music, and we've got singers in the group too. We've got Kim who can sing in the group. We're going to have to get a rendition, but the point being is that we can do a duet if you want. Yeah. I'll be like the drowning cat. Yeah. And the point being is that the beauty about a tune, I find, is that you can revisit a tune A film you watch once, you might watch again, you might watch 2 or 3 times. But a tune you can listen to over and over again, and it evokes memory, emotion, feeling. That's what I love about music. You can hear a song, and do you know when you're driving sometimes you've got a good tune on and you just got to put it back again to the start because someone interrupted you or traffic. I didn't catch that piece properly type thing. And also you listen to a tune that's even 20, 30 years of age and longer than that, and it's just amazing. It evokes a feeling. It's like, you sat there and it really, your memory, it's such a powerful thing, music, and it's got such hypnotic qualities about music. You sort of go into this sort of realm of feeling and memory and state, and reading a book too. You're in that sort of state where you read a book and you transport it to a whole new reality. And now these have got hypnotic qualities. So you could talk to people and find out, are there places you've been that you really enjoy going to? Is there a book you've read? Is there a tune you like to listen to? And that sort of starts invoking that state. It kind of breaks that state that they might be in. What I find quite fascinating is that as human beings we transmit complicated thoughts to one another. So what we've got that's unique is that we can transmit really complicated thoughts to one another. I can speak to you linguistically. Okay? Now, that's quite fascinating, and we're going to look at metaphors shortly. And the reason why it's fascinating is that we can look at problem outcome. So I can ask you, if you could be any way you want it to be, different from how you've been, how do you want to be different? And have a moment to think about that and think, okay, where you are, and maybe you can sort of think about a problem in your life at the moment. Not that you've got any problems having been on this course, you're problem free. Okay, but the point being is that life being the way it is, and if you can think of a problem you might have, and think of orientating yourself towards a solution. And we can frame the problem as a metaphor, which we'll sort of do and practice shortly, and we can use a metaphor to take us to a solution. Now we know that metaphor and story stimulate the brain, and we sort of can produce that alpha state. But the point being is, if you think of a problem you've got at the moment, how would you like it to be different? If you could have things the way you want them to be, how would you like it to be? So, and almost like magic, you can transmit complicated thoughts to each other. Okay? It's almost magic. Language is fascinating, I think, the way we communicate. And there are approximately 7,000 languages across the world. Different structures, different vocabularies, different sounds. The way you pronounce Birkenhead is different to the way I pronounce Birkenhead. And it's quite fascinating, isn't it, how I've not counted all these, by the way, this is based on research. But there's so many out there, and different structures as well. Vocabulary, sounds, and the way. What I find really fascinating is that you communicate, you've got this aerial vibration that purling through the eardrums as you watch my mouth, whoever's mouth is speaking, through the eardrums, pouring into your brain. These vibrations, these words, and the person receiving the sounds transforms into thoughts, into feelings, into actions through space and time, and has the potential to create an idea, an association, a behavior. And I mentioned earlier in the course that we have an idea, and the idea could be that smoking's cool. You have an association, and you have a behavior, but equally we might decide that it's uncool and not good for health, and then you have a new behavior, smoking cessation. So we have an idea and there's an association around food, and that produces a behavior, and life in general. You have these ideas, associations, and language perhaps is the representation of experience. A word like table. How do you know what a table is? How do you know what a chair is? How do you know what a book is? It's just a label for an object you've stored. Over time, with enough repetition, you associate one with the other and recognize the sounds. Okay? So if I ask you, can you move the table, chair and book, you've got a generic representation for that association. Now think for a moment, think about language. Think about what it would be like without language. What would the world be like, do you think, if we couldn't communicate linguistically? What will we do if we didn't have the capacity as human beings to communicate linguistically? What do you think? Who can think back to the point when they couldn't speak linguistically? Yeah, exactly. So obviously you'd use different ways of communication. Okay. What about your own language? At what point does anyone remember their first words? Who recalls their first set of words? Anyone remember their first word? It's a long time ago for some of you in the group. Longer for some than for others. But why do you think you can't remember your first word? Well, you can't remember what you've had for breakfast this morning, like your first word. But why do you think it's such a challenge to remember the first word, so to speak? Why do you think it's difficult to recall our first word? You're still in that sort of unconscious realm, and I guess you're sort of reflecting back. And okay, another way to communicate with people is through what we call a metaphors. Okay, so let's sort of get this slide going. So when we think metaphor, so Romeo and Juliet. Anyone watch Romeo and Juliet? Read the book, the play, whatever. So Romeo, what does Romeo say to Juliet? Well, she's the sun. Okay. Does he mean she's the sun, as in the sun newspaper, the sun is in the sky? Okay. So what does that mean to you? What does that mean to you? Romeo saying to Juliet, she's the sun.
She lights up his life.
Yeah, precisely. Anything you can think of? Kathy, what are your thoughts?
She's a color.
Yeah, possibly. Man, hey, there we go. Introspective. Yeah. Andy, I thought you were a romantic, man.
No, mine's not as good as Mud's.
Yeah.
For me, it come up as warmth.
Yes.
That's what it come up for me.
Yes. Yeah. So a metaphor is a comparison, isn't it? It's a comparison. So it's figurative. Whenever you describe something by comparing it to something else, you're using figurative language. So it's figurative. Okay? A metaphor is a figure of speech in which a word or a phrase is applied to an object that's not literally applicable. Okay? So it conveys that Juliet is Romeo's world, in one sense. Okay? So Juliet is like the sun, would be a simile. Okay, that would be, is like the sun would be a simile. Okay, so we talked about music and songs, and do you ever get frustrated? So I won't say frustrated, but do you ever sort of listen to a song and it conveys a meaning, or you interpret the lyrics as being a certain way? Then the band actually changed the lyrics. 10 years later, you hear the song again, you think, how dare you change those lyrics? You've ruined my song. Okay, so a song, and the beauty of a song can be, you get a band, a big stadium band, to 100,000 people, they're playing to a stadium band. And in that 100,000 people, the message of the song is different to each individual. Okay, so you listen to a nice tune, and it's different for you than what it's for me. And you're sitting there, and it conveys a different meaning. Does that? Yeah. Isn't that fascinating? You don't think that you've got one set of lyrics, one tune, and it means something different to everybody in that group, everybody in that sort of hundreds of thousands of people, and that's really cool. I think we use metaphors all the time to talk about common experience without even being aware that we're using them. Okay, so we use them all the time. In songs, you hear them all the time. Who can think about some songs where there's some metaphors? Anyone can think of songs? Put you on the spot there. Okay, so Kim's going to sing these for us too. Okay, so baby, you're a firework. Come on, show 'em your worth. Remember that? Who sang that? Now I'm trying to think. Yeah, he's got it. I just pretended I didn't know. But Dustin's got the tune in his car. Hey, he's driving this morning. Baby, you're a fire. You know, I wouldn't admit to knowing it, but yeah, I'm a heavy metal person. I'm not allowed to say it. Every rose is a thorn. Just every night has a dawn. That was one of those soft rock bands. I think it was called Poison, that band. It was Poison? Yeah. I'm not going to sing it. It's too embarrassing. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Don't go chasing waterfalls. I'm not going to sing it. You guys are going to leave. What a horrible singer I am. That's why I create the tunes in the background. Yeah. And so it means different. You know, the Hotel California, the Eagles. That's more like it. Welcome to the Hotel California. And it's sort of metaphorically portraying, a situation. Okay. And, like all these things, you can all debate what it means, and it means one thing to somebody else and one to the other. And I suppose it's whatever that means to you, whatever you interpret it to be. What do you think that you're a firework? How do you interpret that? The bonfire night pretty soon.
Explosive? Or...
Yeah, exactly,
Light up the sky,
Yeah, absolutely. Every rose is a thorn. I suppose it's sort of insinuating that he's sort of it's a love ballad, really, probably reflecting on a broken relationship in that respect. Don't go chasing waterfalls. I've had many different people have interpreted it differently, so I'm not even going to go down there. Anything anyone can think of? I'm just curious to know what you guys think. Don't go chasing waterfalls.
Things I always think about when my geography teacher told me about waterfalls, that they're actually flowing up, not down.
Okay, well, there we go. There's always one, man. There's always one. But that's the point. Please stick to rivers and lakes that you're... and Hotel California is... the reference is Los Angeles. The LA and the Hotel California, and sort of alluding to drugs and so on and so forth. And, but metaphors can be spatial, they can be tonal, they can be gestures, they can be postural, they can be sculpting, they can be isomorphic. Okay, they can be, and we'll go into more detail on those as we go along. And it's really fascinating because you can convey representation. There's a lad I used to work with years ago when I was working in football full time, and he was always known when I did some heavy training, and I was known for administering some of the most brutal training sessions. I'd go into beast mode and be 400 metres after 400 metres, and I'd sit back there with my cigar and come on, man, another 400 metres. But the point being is there was a guy who'd gone on to play at the very highest level, by the way, and he always sort of like have a go at me saying, you have to do another, and I metaphored him. I said, you're a machine, dude. And that's a metaphor. A similar would be like you're like a machine. I used to call him a machine. And years later, actually, he came to watch a game. And that I was involved in, because he'd gone on to play at the very highest level. And I heard someone in the background say, "You're a machine." If you want to know who it was, you've got to buy the book. You've got to buy the book. I'll tell you who it is in the book. But yeah, and another time as well, another example is that I was working in care homes, and there was a young lad I'd entered into GCSE to do GCSE, and he sort of had a very poor reading and writing age. He hadn't done much education, and he had all these Liverpool pictures, football club pictures in his room, and I entered him into GCSE, and he, amongst apprehension from the powers that be, but I thought, let's put him in and give it a shot. And he got frustrated halfway through an exam. And I was there, I went to visit him, and one of the staff said, well, you're the one who said to put him for GCSE. Now he's on meltdown. So I saw these pictures of like Liverpool Football Club in his room. And at the time, Liverpool Football Club had played in the Champions League final. They'd played in the Champions League final and had won the Champions League final. And that famous comeback traumatizing Andy now. But the point being is that I said to him, you know what? I use it as a metaphor. I said, well, it's only half time, dude. You know, what would you have done if Liverpool had come out second half and not? And he sort of picked up the pen and kept going. So it's pretty powerful stuff, isn't it? I said, what would you have done if Liverpool gave up at half time? 3-0 down. You know, allegedly, Rafa Benitez said, score the first goal and see what happens. You know, to break it down. I said, well, it's only half time, dude. You know, it's a long way to go. You know, let's give it a go. So it's metaphorical. It's a metaphor. Was it really half time? Well, you know, animals don't communicate with words. They use gesture. We'll sort of touch on as we go along, and sign language, and so on and so forth. And we evolved. Our evolutionary, social, biology, communication, primal times without language. Okay. So how we communicate without language? A lot more limited. So language is useful. Okay. We have a structure to communicate. So, okay, if you decide you want a drink at the store, you can communicate that. If you go to the store, the shop, to buy something and you couldn't communicate linguistically, try it at lunchtime. That's your homework at lunchtime. At lunchtime, go to the local store and order a sandwich non-linguistically and just see what happens.
But that program catch,
yeah.
You know, we have to say two syllables,
Yes.
film or
Yes. Yeah. But precisely. So, you know, you'd use sign, you'd use gesture, you'd use sounds, and, you know. And so, okay, you notice Kathy's making her way across to the drinks machine over there, and you think, well, whatever she's having, I think I might have one too. Okay. Because she seems to be pretty sane, she's okay. Whatever she's in the water that she drinks is working well for her. So I'll have one of them too. So how would you ask her if you couldn't speak? Well, you'd grunt, you'd moan, and you'd sort of. Would that make sense?
Yeah.
You'd probably turn around and give me a good slap and bang. But the point being, that's how you would communicate. You wouldn't have that capacity. While you're there, can I have a coffee too? Be like, you know. And that's the way we used to communicate.
I think I do it more
Yeah.
still.
Yeah, well, no. with the exception of Andy, there's always one. There we go. But the point being is that if you sort of, you know, if you obliterate everybody over the age of 3 years of age, wouldn't it be fascinating in the sense that how would we speak? Not that I think we should do that, by the way. But what would happen to language? Would we speak the same? Now that's a fascinating thing. What do you think, Sarah? If we obliterate everyone over the age of 3 years of age, would they create their own language? Would it be the same language we have now?
Well, they do. I've got an example of friends that boy's Down syndrome and he's coming up to 4 and he can't speak properly, but he can communicate well enough to get by.
Yes.
To get what he wants.
Yes.
And obviously, as parents and as a family, they've picked up on that.
Yes.
And work, you know, and it really, he's not got sign. He's doing his own stuff.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, apparently from science perspective, they say a lot of our communication is non-verbal anyway. So I don't know how they work out 58%, 30%, 7%, but
Not by asking them.
precisely, exactly.
It's remarkable how close our body gestures are to the animals as well. You know, like primates.
Yeah. Speak for yourself, mate. Yeah. Speak for you.
We were in the zoo and we threw
Yeah.
some jammy dodgers over, you know, to the chimps.
You're not supposed to do that.
I know you have to edit that out.
Yeah.
You were doing experiments.
You were doing it. It's all in the course of science. And it was amazing the way they tasted it.
Yes.
And then they went. And the body, the gestures, which is very, very similar.
Absolutely. Well, we've got 95%
You do
DNA.
the same.
Yeah.
I do the same. Yeah.
No, definitely.
For the coffee.
Our DNA is very, very close to chimpanzees.
The
Isn't it?
gestures were just everyone.
Different sequencing, by the way. Yeah, and it's fascinating when you think about how we're so close in DNA to chimpanzees, different sequences, but you think how much more we can do than what they can do. You know, we have a much broader vocabulary than they have. We've got 10,000 words we can do. Some of us more than But the point being is that we can build structures, we can do a lot of things, we can play on iPhones, we can do so many things that they can't do. It's just very, very minimal. But
Well, have you ever been on a holiday, take children on holiday, and there's foreign children, and children communicate without language?
yes.
But they can't speak each other's language,
But
but
they
they
still
can
get
talk
Yeah,
together.
absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. They find a way to communicate precisely. But in your hypnotic induction, by the way, you can use metaphor too. Okay, so the metaphor might be, perhaps you'd like to close your eyes, and as you feel your feet on the floor, you begin to feel a sense of peace, just like a warm summer's day on a lazy Sunday afternoon. A simile is a way of embellishing the concept you want the person to realise. So what concept do I want, if I was doing a session with Andy now, to realise by doing that? Is there a concept I'd be looking for him to do if we're doing a one-on-one session in the induction? Sense of peace,
Feel something.
sense of calm, precisely. So you begin to feel a sense of peace, just like a warm summer's day on a lazy Sunday afternoon. So you're embellishing the concept you want to. So in the induction, you can use the metaphor. Really, really good time to use the metaphor in the induction. Really, really useful to do that.
That's getting someone to like evoke that.
Yeah, absolutely. Priming.
Yeah.
Priming. It's like, the priming, as well as you can then link that to the change work. So you do the prime. So it's a bit like, for example, if I was to write down an S, an O, leave a gap and a P, and I was to talk about cleaning products, what would you sort of? Yeah. If I was to do the same, an S, an O, a gap and a P, and talk about food, what would you? Precisely. So you can prime people in the induction. That's when you can start, priming, like a film. So in the start of the film, you see like little cues. There could be like an ashtray at the start of the film. That doesn't seem to be relevant, but later on you work out, well, that ashtray could be the ashtray someone used to hit someone over the head, or whatever, There's that sort of, you can prime people in induction. But on these words, sounds too. A tone. So a client might say they're feeling stuck. And you might say, well, you're feeling... A sound is a metaphor to convey your empathic understanding of the person's state. So it could be, okay, you come in for a session, you think, I'm feeling a bit down. And you think, well, you feel... and you want to feel, does that... So using that is quite useful to use a tone. Tone is quite useful, a sound, as a metaphor, to convey your empathic understanding of the other person's state. Empathy. Okay, so you feel, and you want to feel, woo! Yeah? Is that okay? So the solution to where they want to go. Okay? The solution they want to go. Or where you think they should go. So the person comes in and you can sort of point the sound towards a solution approach. Can you think of how you could do that? So the person comes in and they might feel deflated. And you can use a sound to precisely, yeah. And how do you want to feel?
Woo!
Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay. And maybe they, because posture, you feel like this. And you feel like that. Does that? Okay.
Yeah.
So we can integrate all this into the process, not one or the other, all of the other, one or the other, above. Just pretty much whatever you feel feasible. Okay. A postural metaphor. Right now it seems to be, how does one posture when they're frustrated? What's a frustrated posture? It could be this. Exactly, you do it too well, man.
Yeah.
I'm an Everton fan.
Yes.
I know that one.
Well, I'm a Napoli fan, so we healed up the wounds, man. Let's support different football teams, all our problems will be over, man. Why don't we just pick a winning football team like everybody else does? Can someone do a session with me so I can just support a winning football team instead? And all these anger and frustration and bitterness around the game will go. What about sad posture? What's that?
Oh, right.
Yeah. You didn't do that very well.
I know, but I can feel it.
Yeah. You're too much of a happy person.
Yeah.
Happy, shiny people. Happy, shiny people, they frustrate me, man. What do you got to be happy about for? Be a miserable person like me. So, you know, and how would you convey freedom? What's a free posture? Liberating posture. Yeah. Yes, it's nice and a happy posture. You know. So you can use posture to convey the message too. So we can think of posture as well as gestures. One of the things about metaphor, by the way, that communication resonates deeper in the structures of the brain. It reaches the deeper structures of the brain. Okay, we've talked about the depths of the brain. I'm not going to go into it again because I'm going to put people to sleep or go into evolution of the nervous system and brain. But it can penetrate the deeper part of the brain. Shakespeare knew it, and Shakespeare would do a lot of, we talked about on the course, neologisms, create new words, new phrases, things that may be commonly used in everyday life but not formally accepted as language. That would trigger error-related negativity, would jolt the nervous system. You expect them to hear one thing, you hear something else. Just chillax, guys. Okay, and all these new words that have come out these days, like sexting and all that sort of stuff, really, it didn't exist back in our day. We just tell people what we thought. Okay, and Shakespeare, love me or hate me, both are in my favour. If you love me, I'll always be in your heart. If you hate me, I'll always be in your mind. Okay, a representation conveying of a meaning. Okay, poets have been using metaphors, writers metaphors, musicians. The metaphor for Tony Robbins is the firewalk is a metaphor. So when you do a Tony Robbins firewalk, is it about walking across fire? What does the metaphor convey? If you can walk across fire, coals. Yeah. Just make sure you have nail varnish on when you walk across. Yeah. I'm inventing a new metaphor. It's going to walk across water. Sod this coal rubbish, man. I'm going to walk. If you can walk across water, then you know you're doing something special.
That would be awesome.
Exactly. One step further, isn't it? I haven't got there yet, but I think I'll figure it out. Maybe I'll put enough salt in the water. Yeah, or maybe put like a clear mesh, no one notices. Yeah, mind you, remember the old football chants? Walk on water. Yeah. Okay. The good news is the test shows us the metaphor. So metaphorically, it's been stabbed in the back, but that can have a profound effect, isn't it? Because you bang your head against the wall and you get stabbed in the back. It can sort of illustrate what's going on at a somatic level, can't it? Really. You've gone for your back there, yeah. Yeah, because it activates the unconscious. Activates the unconscious mind, the metaphor. Milton Erickson was the master of the metaphor. Life will bring you pain all by itself. Your responsibility is to create joy. So Erickson would use a lot of metaphor. Milton Erickson, metaphor was, you receive him his transcripts and read some of his work and you think, wow, powerful. Metaphors can be expressed in sound. We've talked about that gesture. They reach deep areas of the brain, the limbic system. Many animals communicate with sound and gesture. Okay. We talked about how the quickest way from A to B is a straight line. However, if a person could have solved their issue, why are they coming to see for you anyway? So that's where we're going to be creative. Okay. So the metaphor for me, so before the farmer plants the seeds, they cultivate the ground. So you sort of cultivating that ground. Think of a farmer that plants their seeds for the harvest. What do they do to the land before they cultivate the seeds or plant the seeds?
Plough it.
Precisely. Yeah.
Fertilise it possibly.
Absolutely. So they sort of prime it, don't they, for what's to come. The chef, that prepare the kitchen, the ingredients, the utensils. Okay, does anyone know how to bake a cake in here? Okay. So when you bake the cake, so what do you do, sort of, Chef Sarah?
They like to get everything ready, the kitchen cleaned down, get your recipe book out, and you're doing that, get everything out, you're weighing stuff, your oven on, so it's all that prep prior.
Yes.
And then you follow the instructions.
Precisely. So you sort of, you get everything out, and you sort of, exactly. And the good thing, the important thing about this sort of communication, it bypasses resistance, in the sense that we can sort of resist. It's a bit like trying to explain to your teenager behave in a certain way. Okay, imagine telling your teenager the error of their ways. They're going to say, "Oh, thanks, Mum or Dad. You're so great, or you're so insightful of you." You know, are they going to say that? Okay, precisely. So you know, you can talk yourself out of. You shouldn't feel this way. You know, and the point being is that to inspire leaders, to motivate. There's no real content substance, so it's very. You can inspire leaders, and we've seen metaphors. You know, I mentioned the physical metaphor, Tony Robbins seminar. The listener has the interpretation of what's going on. I think it's got to be appropriate to the environment you're in. And ever remember the Eric Cantona metaphor? Like seagulls and the trawlers, and people sort of couldn't, they're probably still trying to work it out now, but what it was. And I think the key is know your audience. So first the composition, then delivery of the metaphor. It's got to be of interest to the listener. Got to apply to them. So I chose the Liverpool metaphor because the lad was a Liverpool fan. Okay? In groups, it creates a rhythm. People fall into a rhythm. So when you're teaching a class, you can use body movement to create a rhythm. Okay? Perhaps modify the expression. A particular speaker came to mind then. So we can sort of modify the expression. We don't have to sort of go too, you know, we sort of modify the expression based on the audience. Breathing. One thing that's really important in individual breathing, the emphasis in your voice as you present the story metaphor comes at the top or the bottom of your breathing cycle. So we can look at the person's breathing cycle. Okay, breathing cycle. We're going to go into this in more detail when I demonstrate after lunchtime. But I'm sort of watching your breathing cycle, my voice and the way I emphasize my voice and the story. I'm focusing on the top of your breathing cycle, on the bottom of the breathing cycle. So whenever anyone volunteers, I'm looking at your breathing rhythm. Okay, in case you're wondering what I'm looking at, well, what's she looking at me like that for? So the observation, the breathing cycle, story, pace and lead. So you become apprehensive when you come out and you volunteer. All eyes are on you. You disclose all the problems. Yeah. And you might feel apprehensive, your state changes, and map that breathing cycle. Pace the story. And then lead the story. Just like a nice, relaxing summer's day. It doesn't have to be all the time, but when you make a point, 2 or 3 cycle emphasis is in the voice. So when you're making a point, you can emphasize on the breathing cycle. Okay, and you feel calm and peaceful, and just breathe. And have you heard an air conditioner in the background, or a sound in the background, or maybe a plane in the background, and you feel calm, and just breathe, peaceful. Yeah. Breathing rapport, seize unconscious attention. Getting deep rapport. So one way, if you match someone's breathing cycle, it's one way to get rapport. But also be mindful. That's one way to get caught into their state too. Okay, so you map the breathing cycle. There was a study, I don't recall what the study was, just come off the top of my head, about someone who had, who was in a room, apparently had some form of depression, and we've talked about depression being complicated. There's no, obviously there's different spectrums of it, many pathways. But anyway, from a perspective of the person, it may have been some threshold. I don't know. He was clearly diagnosed, but certainly there was some evidence to suggest that the mood would change. So if the person goes into a room where people are all upbeat, it can bring the person out. Obviously, it's not going to bring everybody out of that state, but it has the potential to bring some people out of the state. Obviously, it depends on what's causing the state. Okay, but it can change biochemistry. Does that sort of make sense? Mm-hmm. And equally, if you've ever been in a room where there's been people who sort of are down and it's sort of, yeah. So precisely, yeah, absolutely. You know, so the sort of breathing. So you can seize and get rapport. So other thing I do too is when you volunteer and when I do a session is I sort of match your breathing. Okay. A shallow metaphor is quite simple, just basic. A shallow metaphor, just like or as. Okay, that's quite basic. A deep metaphor is more story. Okay, shallow, just like a lazy Sunday afternoon, just like the sun. Okay, just like. It's a shallow metaphor. As, it's quite simple, quite straightforward. Okay, or simile if you want to call it that. That's sort of for simplicity, group them together for now. Okay, a story is deeper. A deeper metaphor is more of a story. Okay, so maybe Jack and the Beanstalk. Anyone ever the Jack and the Beanstalk, Cinderella? Okay, you nodded your head there. Did you? And what did the Cinderella story convey, Kathy?
To me, she was treated badly, wasn't she?
Yeah.
And there's people in her life that
Yeah.
weren't fair.
Yeah.
And it's a happy ending, wasn't it?
Well, it's just lost a shoe, man. You know what I mean? It's just a shoe. I'm joking. See, it means something different to everybody else. To me, it was just someone who lost a shoe. You know, get over it, man. I'm joking. Yeah, precisely. But it is powerful, isn't it? So for like, you know, someone sitting there who's sort of, you know, and they are powerful, aren't they? You know, the ugly duckling is, you know, really, really powerful. All these, you know, quite powerful. When you think about, as you get older, you sort of reflect back on some of these stories. They're quite damn powerful. They're quite brutal, aren't they? Looking back on it, goodness me, it's like, you know, what was the other one? The one who goes out to the bad wolf.
Oh,
Yeah.
No, Little Red Riding.
Yeah. Goodness me, that's pretty brutal, isn't it?
Like
You know?
most of the Disney ones, like
Yeah.
generally your mother or father died or something.
Good, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like, goodness me, you know, yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't that do something a bit more upbeat? It's like, yeah.
Can be. It's
Yeah.
like, mum dies. It's like,
Yeah.
oh.
Anyone who watched that Frozen?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Exactly. Yeah, I want to do a spoiler alert. Anyone not? Well, I'm going to spoil it for you.
Are you going to sing the song?
No. But then everyone will leave. We'll leave that to Kim. She can sing.
We'll back you.
Yeah. Whenever you need anything singing, just
Or a princess dress.
yeah. Yeah. Point to Kim when you need someone singing, not me. You know, I can just about get by when I hear my voice on radio. You know, I switch it on. I think, "Argh!" You know, as you do, it's like it goes off. Yeah. Embedded metaphors, the story within a story. So, you know, a story within a story within a story within a story. And you can open stories up. So you open one story, you have one character, another character, and you have another character. A bit like those films that you see where it starts off where it zones in on one person. Then it sort of zones in on someone or something else. Then it kind of zones in on something else, and it sort of leaves you wondering.
Like Tarantino.
Yeah. I mean, most films, to be fair, do that, and stories do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can nested loop. So you open one story up, and then you open another one up, and you have another one. Then eventually you close one after the other, or one or the other, and you can embed metaphors, the story within the story, and you know, and then by doing that, you can sort of chain states. So okay, you can start with the story begins, and you can chain that state. You go high and low, and the music, and you know, and you'll notice that obviously in big Hollywood productions they put music, don't they? It's that sort of haunting music, and if you end up watching The Joker, you'll see that sort of haunting music when he's sort of making this transition from being Arthur Fleck to the Joker. This sort of haunting sound, you kind of think, wow, and that sort of gives it the flavour. But also you see him do like a physical movement. He does like a dance and his dance conveys of what he's feeling in the inside. You know, and this sort of powerful moment when he does this sort of dance, and it's almost like he's making this transition from being Arthur Fleck to being the Joker as we know it. If what it is real, if he's not sort of experiencing psychotically, so it's quite powerful. And we, as human beings, emotions are powerful, aren't they? Influence our behaviour. You know, why do we watch films? We want that assault on our emotions, don't we? You know, who's watched the Titanic? Have you watched it, Sarah? How many times have you watched it?
couple of times.
A couple of
actually.
times?
Yeah.
Okay, and I would have saved you 3 hours of your life, and you could have dedicated those hours to doing some the training for your marathon. The ship's going to sink.
Yeah.
It's but why do you? It's easy, isn't it? But why do we watch it for if we know the ship's going to sink? Because we want that assault on our emotions, aren't we? Did anyone cry while they watched the Titanic? Anyone ever shed a tear? and the point being, these stories and they're powerful, aren't they? So we like this sort of assault on our emotions, and it's quite powerful. Isomorphic metaphor is corresponding or similar in form and relations. And this is in the manual too, by the way. An isomorphic metaphor will construct a story that has the same key elements, events and subjects that the client has already talked about. One-to-one mapping with relationships in certain forms, and I talked about that before in the Liverpool scenario, but we'll sort of come back to that after lunch. I'm sort of mindful of lunch. So you can change the names, the nouns, and distract the conscious mind. We'll go into that in more detail. You don't need to explain to the conscience, and better not to. So there's no need to explain the metaphor to the person you're doing the metaphor to. Okay? You write or make a mental note of the message you want to deliver. So think of the message that you want to deliver to that person. Okay? Make a mental note of what you want to deliver to that person. Then you can sort of change the names and names and nouns and convey the metaphor. Have a couple of disqualifiers in your pocket, and all that means if the person's suggesting, so for example, you're conveying the metaphor, you could say, well, since you brought it up, I was referring to such and such. Okay, does that make sense? So you could be in an elevator. You might be doing an elevator pitch with someone, okay, metaphorically. And the person says, you suggesting I'll give you the job. Well, since you're saying that, I would consider it. So for example, you decide you want to become the manager of Everton Football Club, and you deliver it in a metaphor. You find a way to metaphorically put the case forward, and if the director of the football club says that you suggesting that we employ you, and you thought, well, since you're suggesting that, I would consider it, but I've got many other offers too, by the way. Does that make sense? Yeah. You distract the conscious mind, and you could knock out the guard, the critical factor. Because in one sense, the conscious mind is what in the world is he or she going on about? And they're trying to make sense of what you're saying consciously, then you go around the back door. So whilst the conscious mind is sort of focusing on what you're saying, you go around the back door. Okay? The semantic space are the same. The relationships between the character states represents relating to the meaning or logic. The unconscious, many relationships. That's why our dreams are so weird. Anyone have these sort of freaky dreams? And the unconscious, many relationships. Repetition and rhythm. We talked about that before for rapport. Okay? And this is a little science behind it. I'm not going to go into too much detail because of lunch. The anterior cingulate cortex and the area of the brain, cingulate cortex, when you focus on what's relevant and not relevant, unconscious, conscious, it helps you distinguish the relevance of information. So this is from a scientific point of view. It helps you put together thinking and emotion and screen out what's not important and to screen what's important. Okay, this region involves decision making in emotional regulation, as well as vital regulation of physiological processes such as blood pressure and heart rate. Okay, anterior cingulate cortex appears to play a critical role in initiation, motivation, and goal-directed behaviours in cognition and motor control. Creating a metaphor has a one-to-one relationship with the key elements in presenting context for a problem. Similar to realisation on an unconscious level, and that may or may need to interpret the metaphor consciously, it doesn't matter. But the fact you have activated certain structures in the interpretation is enough for the state to change. So the intention of the metaphor is important. You can identify the metaphors that people use and talk on in terms of the same metaphors to strengthen rapport. So if someone presents you with a metaphor, you can use one similar or the same to gain rapport. The purpose is to overcome barriers and install a new message unconsciously or consciously and elicit a resourceful state. So what state was I trying to elicit with the person that I mentioned earlier before? The exam?
Oh, yeah, half time.
Precisely. What state was I trying to elicit in that person? a more resourceful state to complete the exam, because they got into unresourceful state. They didn't want to do it no more. So you can use it as a complex situation, like I mentioned before, the ugly duckling is a complex situation, to lead an audience through a chain of states and install a new strategy. Generating a metaphor, we're going to go into more detail after lunch. Okay, the basic steps for a metaphor: help someone resolve a problem. Step 1, identify a present situation or issue and the desired outcome and state. So present state, problem state, what the issue is, and the desired state. So the issue is he's in a situation where he's not going to complete his exam in a disempowered state. A more empowered state would be to feel a sense of confidence and neutrality and think, let's get through, let's go to process and get through. Okay, so in relation to the footballer, to get him to feel empowered to do what he can do, to do the running I suggest that he does to become the best he can be. Okay, and then you can notice significant people, places, things in the situation and build a relationship between them. That's the next step. So you use that creativity, but keep the desired state in mind and chunk up from the present state to a category. What's an example of, situation of, the issue, the example, and then with what is another example of this category, a situation that includes the possibility of ending in the desired state. Find analogies for significant people, place and things and the relationship between them. And we're going to sort of do that after lunch. I'm mindful of lunch. I've sort of gone through that a little bit quicker because I've eaten into your lunch and I don't want to do that, because you've got homework. You've got to, the two things you're doing at lunch, two tasks I've got for you. One, you've got to order a coffee without using language, if you can do that. And then having done that, you've got to convey a metaphor to someone. Just go up to someone on the street who looks a bit down and say, give them a metaphor to take them feeling down. You don't have to do it, by the way. Kim's looking startled there. You can if you want, but I'm not advising you. He was ready for it. Yeah. Jim told me. Blame it on me. Yeah. That's the easiest way. What I've found you do is you pass the buck in these situations. So I think I might give it a go myself.
Did you notice my metaphor?
Yeah. Exactly. He can get his arm back on me after all this hypnotic journey. Yeah. But we'll go to lunch. I don't want to eat into your lunch. And after we come back from lunch, we're going to put our creative heads on it and create these weird and wonderful and wacky metaphors and stories. And one thing that you could do, actually, be mindful and just notice how people do speak in metaphor. And you're probably thinking now, every damn second sentence used is a metaphor, and it's really, really powerful. So one thing you can do, I think, is sort of get an idea of how many people do speak in metaphors without even realising it. Fascinating. So lunch it is. The sun is out there, and go out there and paint the town red. Yeah.